This is Hannibal here from the HannibalTV.com, and I am going to do an audio version of my weekly review of the points I find interesting in Dave Meltzer's Wrestling Observer newsletter. And I am doing this audio because I don't have Piper with me tonight, and you guys don't want to see my ugly mug if she's not in the picture. So let me jump into it. By the way, there was a Great North Wrestling podcast last night with Ted Hart, which was his first appearance anywhere, I think, in many years. If you guys are a Ted Hart fan, I would suggest you check that out. He touched on all the topics that were asked of him. So he didn't hold anything back, that's for sure. It was interesting. It was better than I expected it to be. By the way, this is also streaming on Facebook at the Hannibal TV, where all of our live streams are ad-free. And follow us on Instagram and Twitter at the Hannibal TV. But I'll stop digressing. I will jump in the news. The Extreme Rules show coming up tomorrow in Philadelphia, one of my least favorite places in the U.S. But speaking of Ted Hart, there is if you search on YouTube, Ted Hart's Night Out in Philadelphia, I did have a very interesting night with Ted in Philadelphia, and Melina was actually there for part of it too, for Royal Rumble weekend a few years ago. But yeah, that's an interesting video if any of you want to check it out. But 13,459 tickets sold so far for that pay-per-view. Philadelphia, a big wrestling town, of course. Main new thing from the past week is Daniel Cormier, the UFC Hall of Famer, has been added to it. He was never a big pay-per-view seller. He did say before he went into UFC that he wanted to be a wrestler. And WWE has discussed using him as an announcer on SmackDown before. But as far as anyone knows, this is just a one-time appearance for now as the guest referee for the Matt Riddle versus Seth Rollins pit fight. How are we supposed to believe Seth Rollins is a legitimate fighter at all, let alone needs a UFC Hall of Famer to control him, when a short, fat, partially handicapped in the head fan basically took him down and embarrassed him. And then he said the next day publicly that he was frightened by the situation. So I don't know. I don't know why you would need a UFC. Why don't you just bring the fan? Bring that handicapped fan in. That would be even more interesting to me. Actually, I'd rather see the fan against Seth Rollins. I would actually buy the pay-per-view if it was that. That would be interesting. Gable Stevenson, the University of Minnesota NCAA champion and Olympic champion, is now training full-time at the Performance Center, so it's believed he's likely not going back to amateur wrestling. Nigel McGuinness, who was with WWE since 2016 and was most recently part of NXT UK as an announcer, and NXT UK is now out of business, has been released. Dwayne Johnson is saying he's definitely not going to run for president now. Bobby Fish, who I once drove to the airport back in 2008 from Eldon, Missouri to, I think it was either St. Louis or the other big city the name is escaping me now, but he needed a ride from Eldon after the Harley race camp, and I gave him a ride. He was a Harley race trainee. He's going to be in a boxing match in the undercard of a show headlined by Floyd Mayweather Jr. versus YouTuber Deji Utajimi. Sorry if I'm pronouncing that wrong. Who's the brother of KSI. Floyd Mayweather Jr. is doing like a tour of exhibition fights right now. Antonio Inoki passed away this past week. Huge legend in Japan. He died of heart failure at 79. There was a backstage skirmish In AEW this week in Washington, where apparently Andrade attacked Sammy Guevara and was sent home. Andrade seems to. First of all, he's not interesting. He publicly complained a few weeks ago that he was not getting enough airtime on AEW. And you know what? They give airtime to people that actually get ratings. Maybe you should do something that will pop a rating or make you popular. Because as far as I know, Andrade, the thing you're most known for is being Ric Flair's son-in-law. And if I was a betting man, which I'm not, you will not be the last husband of Charlotte Flair. I mean, I think she's only 38, 37, 38, 39, and she's on her third husband already. Anyways, he was publicly complaining about AEW a couple weeks ago. Now he's attacking somebody backstage. So I don't see a big upside to Andrade. I'd cut him loose. I mean, if WWE thought he was anything special, they would have kept him on because he is Charlotte's husband after all. I believe they were only engaged at that point then. But apparently the most credible version of the story Meltzer's heard is Andrade attacked Guevara with no warning, landed 2 punches, and it was quickly broken up. Guevara wasn't injured, and he was allowed to still have a match on the show because he did not fight back. AEW is no longer on television on Latin America, or in much of Latin America. Another reason to dump Andrade. The show had aired on Space, the same station that airs AAA in Mexico, South America, and Central America, and the Caribbean, but they could not come to a new agreement. And AEW's attendance has been down for their big 3rd anniversary Dynamite taping this past week. They only had 3,100 paid in Washington, D.C., and they did a 0.33 rating. Rampage at that same taping did a 0.16 rating. SmackDown in Winnipeg, which was the first TV taping in Manitoba that I can remember. I mean, I'm sure they've been there since then, but the big one I can remember is they did an In Your House from the Winnipeg Arena that I believe that may have been Goldust's debut against Marty Jannetty, possibly. And that's the only match I remember from that show. And then I remember they did the Raw from Brandon, Manitoba the next night. And Brandon is a really small town, and that was the days that they did 3 TVs in one shot. So I don't even think they go to Brandon anymore. It's that small. But yeah, they only had 8,500 paid in Winnipeg, which I'm surprised. And I'm also surprised, and I'll say it again, why isn't AEW coming to Winnipeg? They have Chris Jericho and Kenny Omega. I mean, I'm not a big Winnipeg person, but is Chris Jericho not the most famous person from Winnipeg in popular culture? Wouldn't he be a guaranteed sellout there for both Dynamite and Rampage? That would make sense to me. And Kenny Omega, he's not really a proven draw or anything. He's actually, I mean, for all that the Dave Meltzers of the world were saying he was going to be the next big star, I don't think he's caught on at all, to be perfectly honest with you. But that's just my opinion. Is he good at doing spots? Does he have a good physique? Yes, I have nothing against him. I'm just saying he's not the next Ric Flair from like a character point of view, but he is very talented. And obviously, I do think he would be a draw in Winnipeg, hence why I'm bringing that up. The October 3rd Raw taping in St. Paul, Minnesota this week had 6,500 paid, 7,294 in the building, and a 0.4 rating. The 3rd hour featuring Braun Strowman dropped significantly. NXT did a 0.13 rating. Former WWE Tough Enough winner Sarah Lee has apparently passed away at the age of 30. So I'm very sorry to hear that. It's interesting. She won the female version of the 2015 Tough Enough, according to the report that I read. And the guy that won the male version of that and the runner-up guy that was also signed never went anywhere. And I did a promo for that Tough Enough back in 2015. It was before I'd given up on WWE. And they actually aired a part of it on SmackDown. And it had over 100,000 hits, which was more than a lot of people that made the show. And I would have been more entertaining on the show. But for whatever reason, they didn't use me. But what the hell? No, I'm really sorry to hear about the passing of this Sarah Lee. That's way too young to pass. But I'm going to put up my promo. And definitely, I think I should have at least had a chance to be on that Tough Enough. I also made it to the Denver tryouts of Tough Enough 3, the one that John Morrison won. I think he's the most successful Tough Enough winner. The Miz might be the most successful Tough Enough personality, but he didn't win. Pewter won that one.
My name is Devin Nicholson, and ever since I was about 4 years old, I have wanted to be a WWE superstar like my heroes, The Undertaker, the Macho Man, and the Immortal Hulk Hogan. I am a former national champion and Olympic trials silver medalist in amateur wrestling, and I was trained for professional wrestling by the Mountie, Jacques Rougeau, and I'm a graduate of the infamous Hart Family Dungeon. I have stepped into the ring with Psycho, Sid Vicious, Kevin Nash, and the legendary Terry Funk. But now it is time for me to reach my ultimate goal of becoming a WWE superstar and showing why I am tough enough.
Thank you for watching the Hannibal TV. Please like this video if you enjoyed it and click the subscribe button to not miss any of our latest shoot interviews, match videos, or news updates.